Yay! We finished Gokudolls, the last show from the summer season that I did the anime of the week for that was not dropped. So the only two shows we finished from the summer season were Gokudolls and Planet With.
When I first saw that the show was announced, it was Backstreet Girls, and I thought it was gonna be a gender bent version of the Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
But it's not that.
No.
This ain't that.
It was really funny that you had I remember that, and no, it's Backstreets as in they are gangsters.
Yeah.
So the conceit of this show basically is just that these three gangsters working for this wacky gang leader get ordered to have sex change operations in Thailand, and they get turned completely transformed into just beautiful teenage girls who he forces to become idols.
Full K-pop.
Just because he feels like it, basically.
Yeah.
And so of course.
Didn't they fuck up?
I don't
Weren't
really
they,
know.
Being punished? Cause
they were being punished, but it was for unreasonable circumstances.
I mean, that's kind of the premise of the show.
Yeah, the boss is just an asshole, and so
he's
he
a
kind
psychopath.
of was just
he is crazy.
He basically was just yeah, I want you guys to do this because I want to do this, but I think that he put the blame on them for something, but it was more he was using it as leverage.
Yeah, I
didn't.
I actually didn't see the first episode of the show because you were doing it for
Anime of the Week.
Anime of the Week, and you just told me it was good, and I watched I think from episode 2 or maybe episode 3, but
yeah.
So
you
I don't.
You get the point pretty quickly.
Yeah, you get the point. I was just wondering if there was more of a backstory for the characters. I didn't think so.
The funny thing is that they start. What's fascinating about this show is that early on, it's just humor at the fact that three gang members have now been put into the bodies of idols, so their personalities do not match their profession.
And one of them has severe hemorrhoid problems.
There's a lot of fish out of water humor with them entering the idol industry. They have a manager who thinks that they just are idols, so he's zeroed in on how to make them better at that, but doesn't understand their circumstances at all. Then there's a bunch of mafia people who know that they are mafia and have weird interactions with them. And then because they involve themselves in TV and shit, they meet all these other weird characters who they end up having interactions with. And so early on in the show, it's mostly just jokes about the circumstances, which are hilarious. And because they're put into so many different situations, it stays funny. But as it goes through episodes 3 and 4 or so, you start learning their backstories, because a lot of how they interpret situations is that they'll connect it to something that happened to them in the Yakuza days. So early on, there's all these memories of this guy who went to prison, who was one of their older brother guys, who told them all these touching things, and they're now applying that to their current situation. But the more you look into their histories, the more you get a psychological profile of the characters, where they grew up in broken homes, and they have all these really hard ass backgrounds, really genuinely in
No wonder they ended up in the mob.
Yeah, it almost feels like a social commentary, the level it goes to make these characters seem like real people who would end up in these circumstances,
I mean, I think the show is kind of a social commentary, even in the idol industry and and stuff.
It definitely gets that way, especially towards the end, when there's the scene in the last episode where the girls are just doing a meet and greet, and their fans are all insanely creepy, and they just have to put up with this incredibly strange shit. A guy puts his underwear in front of the girl and is just I just want you to stare at the underwear for 5 minutes.
And I mean, recently in the news there was the spin-off of Akiba 48 or whatever, that the idol girl who had to apologize to a stalker. You've heard about that story, right?
So I think this anime came out before that, but it's indicative
it
of,
does act
what it's like.
It is fucked. I just thought it was funny that that happened right when we were deciding to rewatch the show.
Yeah.
And it's oh, idol shit.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, it's like the idol shit is crazy, but then on top of that, you've also got the Yakuza shit, which is even crazier. And there's scenes in this show that go to really like out there extremes with what they're willing to show. Like there's a part where one of the characters is caught saying that he like wants to have sex, like one of the sex changed characters, a fourth member who joins later into the show. And the boss overhears him saying that he wants to fuck, and he's like, an idol is not allowed to say that she wants to fuck. So that is real shit in the idol industry. Like, they really can't, like, be forwardly sexual. But the way, because it's Yakuza, that he tries to brainwash the desire for sex out of him is to force him to watch bestiality porn in a dark room.
With a dog.
With a dog. And, like, he's like, getting really turned off by it, but then he's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna jack off to it. But then he can't, and the dog, meanwhile, has a huge boner, and then just starts fucking another dog. And they just show all of this to us. And, like, after the episode of the next episode preview, they, like, literally have a segment of Chiaki Khan, the director, like, bragging that they got away with this scene in the show, like, saying how ballsy the producer is to let them put this scene in. And Chiaki Khan is a fascinating director who worked on Higurashi and Umineko and some other, like, very strange adaptations from, like, J.C. Staff and Studio Dean. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I mean, it is here.
And it's maybe over there too.
Whoa.
Whoa. The trajectory of the show is that the more you learn about these characters, I would say that it's like it takes the situation completely seriously. Like, aside from the fact that it's goofy that the head of the Yakuza would, like, create this situation in the first place, like, for everyone within the situation, the circumstances are serious. And so, like, everyone has to react seriously to this situation that is so bizarre that, like, there is no real way to react to it. So, like, everyone who gets caught up in the whirlwind of the Gokudolls, who, like, forms this community of people who, like, have a problem with them.
Spurned women's club.
Yeah, like a spurned women's club, but they all hook up with each other right away. So it becomes just a weird social club, and then the guy who created its wife, like, mistakenly thinks that he's cheating on her with this idol group, not realizing that he controls the idol group, and she joins this club and is trying to take it seriously while they all think it's a social club, and it just reaches a level of where the evolution of all these characters who are just kind of initially just, like, one-off bad guys who had some funny interaction with a gangster pretending to be an idol. Now they have this incredibly complicated web of connections between them.
It's honestly probably, like, the most interesting thing about the show.
Yeah, because there's
that group of characters.
There's conversations or scenes where, like, there's a part where they're auditioning they're trying to make their own Gokudolls to compete with Gokudolls, because this is, like, the hackneyed evil villain scheme that they've come up with.
Yeah, they're coming up with, like, a bunch of different schemes.
And so they're like, her logic is that they want to have it be just like the other girls, except more motherly instead of more childish. But when they put out their ad for that, all the women who turn up are, like, these really fucking weird housewives who have, like, really, like, obtuse, like, traumatized reasons for why they're there. And they're giving their speeches about why they want to be idols, and, like, the speeches they're giving are troubled, and the fact that they have such a warped perspective on what's going on. And then the other couples who are reacting to it, who don't really understand this plan in any depth, are, like, being drawn in by this speech, while the woman who's in charge of the whole thing is just like, what in the fuck is going on? Like, she's like, this is supposed to be an idol audition.
Levels.
Get the fuck out of here, you know? And, like, everyone having all those different reactions at the same time just makes the scenes really surreal. And they just get more and more surreal as, like, more of that shit keeps piling on top of itself, until it's just, like, the scenes that happen in the later... The best is when the fucking, the teenage girl joins the group. Like, an actual teenage girl who's just a hot girl who's really nice, like, but she's, like, in high school, and she joins them as an idol, not knowing the Yakuza background of it. And it's just all misunderstandings until it builds to a point where she, like, I don't even want to spoil it for people who haven't
Yeah.
seen the show. What she ends up seeing the other characters doing, it's just like it just flatlines that whole narrative because it's just like, well, the jig is up, so to speak. It's fucking hilarious. But yeah, like it. I guess it's not like the most memorable comedy series that I've seen or anything. Like,
It's a super memorable setup, and they take the
yeah,
jokes really far.
right.
And the art style is unique.
It's like janky in
It's
like an
very
Adult Swim
janky,
kind of way, or like
yeah.
Inferno Cop almost. But
It's
like
endearing.
when they draw the like out there facial expressions, it's
The
fucking
facial
hilarious.
expressions, yeah, they make the show.
And I really enjoy just the intense music and the great voice acting.
They even
The
had some
pacing
good
of it
idol
is great.
songs in it.
Yeah, the idol songs are surprisingly legit compared to everything else about it. But like, I just think it was well directed and well made as a comedy show. But like, the biggest criticism I would say I have is that like the main three characters are borderline indistinguishable. Like,
Yeah, they're all Yakuza. They
I
all
can't tell you whose past was whose. Like,
even
I don't
though
really
they have
remember.
like episodes going into the past of each
Yeah.
character, and it's supposed to be like, this is the leader, and this is
Right.
the cute one, and this is that one. They really are
Good
indistinguishable.
luck keeping
It's-
track, because for the most part they feel the same way about most things that are going
Yeah,
on,
because they're in the same situation.
which is fine because like there's plenty of other characters to have different perspectives. But like, it is just like, yeah, they are kind of just the three Gokudolls, and like they're fun and they're cute, and they tread a great line between like making them legitimately like hot and girly by having like they're voiced by girls, of course. Like, it makes sense, but like they start to lapse into just being girls sometimes, and it's really fucking funny that the show lets that happen, but then reels it back and keeps reminding you that they are still like 40-year-old Yakuza guys with hemorrhoids and shit. And like, it's really funny that it will hopscotch over that line back and forth, of are they cute girls or are they disgusting men? Uh, but yeah, like when I think of it in comparison to like Tiramisu, there's not as many jokes that I immediately could remember, like the rice balls on the arms from that show. Like, there's nothing that like, it's more like the concept of what's going on is more interesting than the actual just like
yeah, like it gets really shocking.
moments.
It takes the jokes to the next level, and when it does that, I think it's like at its strongest. Even though sometimes it's kind of like, why? Like, why am I watching this? And the rest of the time, like, I didn't think a lot of the jokes hit.
Sometimes
like,
it's not even trying to be funny as much as awkward. Like,
yeah,
sometimes it's just like pushing the scenario to a point where like it's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, I appreciate its balls in doing that,
Yeah.
but like I also think sometimes like nothing really was being said by having it go that far.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate some of the humor, but like I didn't think it was the funniest thing in the world.
I would definitely give this like, I give it like an 8 out of 10. Because like, I'm thinking about it in comparison to something like Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei, which has a similar style of humor with like the combination of just like slapstick and social commentary and like cute girls, but also just like dry, dark humor. And like, that show had much more memorable characters and like certain individual gags that are really hilarious. But it also had times where it just got so repetitive and weird and esoteric that it just wasn't funny at all, And like, so like it's like higher highs and lower lows, and I feel like this show doesn't reach as high of highs, but it also was never like not funny at all.
Yeah, it was never like painful to watch.
So like, it was easy to watch all 10 episodes, even if it wasn't always at its peak. It was like, anytime I might have thought like, oh, this episode wasn't as funny as the last one, like it hit again right afterwards, So it's easy to watch. I would give it an 8 out of 10 personally.
I'd probably give it like a high 7. I really appreciated that it took its jokes so far.
Yeah.
And I was laughing my ass off like the first couple episodes we watched, and then like there was always a point in the episode where I laughed.
Right.
It wasn't like I was, I wasn't disappointed with that. I enjoyed watching it. It just wasn't my favorite comedy of this year, in a year with a ton of great comedies.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Tiramisu and Pop Team Epic are both shows I would put,
but if the premise sounds
more
like
memorable.
something that would be a fun time for you, definitely check it out.
Yeah. All right. See you in the next one. Imouto Janai. Janai.
Imouto genocide, more like.
We watched the first episode of this. Not gonna lie, I was hoping it was gonna be hot. Because there was an uncensored release.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of shows that are like just fan service shows, but they push it to the level where the Blu-rays, it's like it basically is porn, because they're usually better animated than actual porn. Like, there was a...
Hope.
Yeah.
You hope that when a studio is working on a TV anime, that it will be at a higher quality
than some OVA.
Yeah, some
porn thing.
Porn drawn by Chinamen.
But
no, not always.
Yeah, like, I was thinking of there was an Imouto show from a couple years back where, like, they had, like, basically full-on sex scenes that would last, like, minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I've
that
seen
were really well animated.
porn that is better animated than this.
Well, this thing had, like, 2 shots of nipples.
Okay, it was really weird because, like, when it did actually show it, it was good. And, like, there was one scene where they were showing feet, and I was like, that's, like, some pretty good feet.
They got the fetishes on right, but, like, they take up so little time.
I think it's preparing, like, this new generation of, like, weeb trash that, hey, if you're gonna fucking be into fetishes, you have to compensate. Like, girls are gonna have trash faces. So, I think that's kind of the message the show is showing. That, like, hey, if you want your dick sucked, it's gonna be by, probably a deformed woman.
Fucking... The show, like... The nipples last, like, 2 seconds out of 24 minutes.
And they're really, like, the one scene where it's, like, his friend who's working with him is just, like, out of the blue. Like, she just, like, leans down and her fucking tits are out.
And, like, the show, conceptually, it's kind of hot that every girl in this show is just DTF with the main guy, but it's to such an extent that you're just like, why doesn't he just fuck one of them? Like, literally, this girl comes up to him at a party. And granted, the misconception at the base of this is that she thinks that he wrote this light novel that was actually written by his little sister. And she thinks that he's like a fucking genius. So she basically offers to do anything for him.
I'll do anything to improve the story.
Yeah. And what she says after having taken his hand and put it on her tit and told her, this is what a breast feels like. Surely this will help you.
Yeah.
You virgin author.
She wants the D.
So, at this point, while you could say that he is being chivalrous by taking advantage of the position of, like he's not taking advantage of this because of the fact that it's not actually him who wrote the book. However, A, if he did some weird shit with this teacher or this woman, he probably would have the ability to write a better book. And B, she has already sexually assaulted him. So... she's not in the clear no matter what here. This is a fucked up weird situation where all the girls just want to fuck this guy and he's just like, whoa, I sure am in a light novel. This is weird. And then he just like kind of goes his way out of a situation.
Sex is funny.
Yeah. Sex is funny. It's really stupid.
It's really
It's really ugly. Aside from the couple seconds where it looks good, but the rest of it is hideous. It's like, again, porn is better looking than this. Like, there's no reason to stop here. There are shows that the reason you watch them is that the fan service they slip in is better than the animation quality of most porn. Or just because there's a better story.
I mean,
but the story in this is
there
asinine.
are better anime about little sisters writing light novels. Like, you have your pick.
The only thing that I liked about this one, and I wanted the show to be good initially because I called it Eromanga Sensei for sane people. Because the plot is basically the same. Little sister's in love with the older brother. She wants to work with him on a light novel. He's going to base his entire career around her talent, essentially. But the difference is that this little sister is not a tsundere. She's just a dere. She's just great. She's just good at everything. She's a she's a nag,
not want to be around that girl.
But like she nags him about stuff that he clearly doesn't keep, like stuff that he needs to be keeping track of in his day-to-day life, but isn't.
Yeah.
On some level, so like
Probably
I think he just sees her as a wife.
Yeah.
Like she just is a wife already. Like she does his cooking and fucking like takes care of his shit and like just does everything. She's like a straight A student. She's just perfect. She has no downsides. So it's like, yeah, of course you'd be in love with that little sister. Anybody would be in love with that little sister. Cause,
except for the fact that she's ugly as shit.
Well, you know, that's because of the animators. But you see her tits at one point. So I was shocked that, like, because you see her tits in an imagination sequence. So I was shocked that they didn't have him walk in on her by the end of the episode.
Okay, probably the worst looking girl is the artist. Like, as soon as they showed her and, like...
Which one?
The big tit artist. The one that's gonna draw for him, the double ahegao girl.
Oh, the one, the blonde one?
The blonde one with the big tits.
Yeah.
She was grotesque.
But there was another big titted girl who showed up at the very end who was kind of hot.
That was his classmate, I think.
Yeah, she looked good.
Yeah, she looked, you know...
Not that it matters. We're not watching any more of this show. This
No,
is a drop after one episode.
No!
We're just being, like, more fair to this than most people probably would.
Yeah,
that's my ambition
I went
here.
into it with low expectations. I know all the meme faces from 4chan, but I didn't find anything redeeming about the show.
Next. So, May and I had watched episode 1 of Grappler Baki, like, a couple of months ago, and it was so insanely over-the-top violent, with so many shocking moments, that May basically opted out. She was like, you can watch this one without me. It's more than I can handle. So I was like, alright, I'm going to give it a shot on my own. So I watched episode 2, and I was like, honestly, this is more than I can handle. Because the Grappler Baki is just pointlessly violent. That is what it is. And that's fine. In fact, it's really amazing at being what it is. But, like, you have to just, on premise, be interested in watching a show that is nothing but pointless violence. With nothing else backing it at all. And, like, I don't really think I am that into, like, literally just pointless violence. Like, I enjoy violent stuff. I'm not really much of a gore hound. It's easier with anime because it doesn't look real. Like, I can't really watch... I don't watch a lot of the, like, you know, really crazy fucking horror movies or anything like that. You know, I generally avoid extremely violent live-action movies if they go beyond the level of cartoonishness of, like, you know, a Quentin Tarantino movie or something, which I would enjoy. But, like... The level of violence in some of these things is you know, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's like pushes the limits for me, but it's just so absurd, like that most of the time what's happening looks stupider than it does scary, though, like, you know, it has its moments of being pretty intense, but I think that if it weren't for the fact that that existed, I don't know if Grappler Baki could have ever been nearly as successful as it's been to have lasted so fucking long. Because, like, I feel as though, you know, stuff like Fist of the North Star, you know, brought the violence and, like, some level of absurdity. JoJo took it to the next level in, like, the realm of being crazy. But, like, JoJo feels more pointed, like, it has better justifications for what's going on. Like, it explains itself. Like, even if stuff happens pretty quickly, there's always some kind of explanation for why the people are able to do the things that they are able to do. Um, and the encounters are like a game, and that's what attracts people to the series is that all this crazy stuff's going on, but if you're paying close attention, you can follow it. Baki is just fucking madness. Like, it's just, if you took JoJo and you removed the justifications and it was just like, no, the point is the insane violence. Like, you don't need to have a chess game in order to explain that, The characters are just fucking crazy and they want to fight and they want to kill each other. And, they will murder anyone for any reason. It doesn't really matter. They just want to fucking they just want to destroy each other. It's fucking crazy as shit. And, like, I went ahead and watched the Super Eye Patch Wolf video on it because I remembered that he had done one, and I was sure that he would have a reasonable stance on this because he's somebody who is a huge fan of JoJo for the reasons I've described. Somebody who obviously has watched a lot of turbo-violent cartoons because, that's what happens when you're his age and you come up and get into anime as a dude. Like, you see a bunch of, like, you start with DBZ, which is fairly violent compared to most American shows, and then you see Adult Swim shit, which is a lot more violent, and then you start exploring Shonen Jump shit, and that's even more violent because you got crazy shit in there. And then you start reading classics, which are way more violent, and then you get to the point where you stumble upon Grappler Baki, and it's like, this seems reasonable at this point, You've already read JoJo. It's just as crazy, but, like, it's just, like, more unhinged to the point where you have to have been desensitized to this to really, I think, appreciate it. And so, like, Eye Patch Wolf's video was great. He really sells how incredible the work being done on the series is, how fantastic the artwork is, how, like, just batshit insane it truly gets, to a point where it's way beyond what even has been shown in, the anime so far, having only watched 2 episodes. Like, there's some fucking real out there shit that goes on. But, like, nonetheless, like, this arc is just, like, pure violent mania. It's just absolutely insane. So, I feel as though I got enough out of watching Eye Patch Wolf's video that I feel as though I've experienced the series to as much of an extent as I really care to. Like, I know that's probably not the intention of his video, but it's a really good video. So I would honestly recommend just watch his video, and if it sounds like you would enjoy this series, go watch it. But if you watch that video and you're like, that looks way too fucking intense and ridiculous for me, I want to watch a show that actually does have some kind of point, because, like, the shock value of the violence, you just can't take any character seriously as a character because you know that they're just gonna die. Like, they all exist to get pulverized at any fucking moment. So you're just like, I don't really care about what's going on. This is just gonna be watching people die. So, yeah. If you're not into that, you might not like the show. Holy shit! We watched 7 episodes.
Yeah,
7.5.
7.5.
Of, you want to say the title?
Of UzaMaid.
UzaMaid. That's right. That was the shortened version. I was gonna make you say Uchino Maid got Uzasu.
No, you ain't gonna get me with that.
UzaMaid. So we both watched this for probably the most obvious reason, because we're a couple of lolicons.
Yeah, and the gimmick was funny, and the character was kind of cool. She was like a buff, like, ex-military lady.
Yeah, we should probably explain the plot then.
Yeah.
Because it's a maid, well, a woman who's from the military, who is just a pedophile. Like, in universe, she is just a pedophile.
Yeah, girls will ask her out and she'll just turn him down and say, I'm not into anyone who's had their period.
Yeah, she's not interested in anyone above the age of having had their first period, and like she explicitly wants to dedicate her life to just being in the service of some beautiful young blonde girl. Like she specifically is into little blonde lollies, and so she stakes out and like stalks this girl. Like she goes to her, like she sees her out in a backyard one day. Like she sees her playing with her mom in like a side yard, and she becomes like obsessed and just starts like investigating every so often, like when she would pass by or whatever.
Long term, because like in the end, her mom ends up passing away, and then she becomes
Right.
a hiki and like won't leave or go to school, and her dad is trying to find a caretaker.
Was she a hiki?
She didn't leave. I don't know if she never left her room, but she didn't go to school. She didn't leave the house.
That's right. I forgot she wasn't
She
going
was
to
like,
school.
yeah, she just spent all of her time on the computer.
Yeah, so basically the daughter had turned into a total brat, and she kept scaring away all the other, like, anybody he tried to hire to take care of her, because he has to work,
Yeah,
the dad we're
she'd
talking about.
pull like the parent trap on them.
Yeah, so they, basically this guy's like, he's trying to find the ultimate caretaker, and he's about to give up, but then this maid, who's obsessed with the little girl, comes to work for him, and, because of the fact that she is both a trained military I think she's an officer.
Yeah.
Because of that, she is, unwavered by anything that this little girl can throw at her, and seeks to make her. I don't know. She just really wants to be around the little girl. Like she
wants
doesn't
to marry her.
She doesn't particularly have any like. This is not an emotional show in any way. Like,
No.
in spite of the fact that it's about, like, a character whose mom died and she's kind of dealing with, like,
grief and, like, depression.
Yeah, that stuff's not
and
really
also
touched on.
sexual harassment constantly.
Yeah, from this maid.
Yeah.
That's, like, the main It's really more, like, the way that she helps this little girl is just by taking her mind off of things by being a new reason to be stressed out. It's like, she was pissed off because she lost her mom, but now she's pissed off because she has this shitty maid. But being pissed off at the maid has led her to, like, go back to school.
Yeah,
and
she leaves her room, she goes back to school, she makes friends.
She'll take care of herself so that the maid won't. She'll be like, oh, I'll do my own, I'll cook my own meal, because, like, I don't want you to, even though, well, she doesn't do that, because the maid makes amazing meals. So that's the one, like, that's the funny thing is that she ultimately, like, will let the maid stick around because she takes good care of her and feeds her and stuff. But, like, it's really bizarre to watch this because the maid is, like, she's not a literal rapist, but she has a rapist mentality.
She's also a stalker. Like,
yeah.
She dresses up in, like, schoolgirl clothes and tries to, like, infiltrate the school to keep an eye on her.
She doesn't she doesn't care about the word no, Like,
no, not at all.
Like, because the little girl explicitly is like,
like,
I hate you, get out of my life, please stop.
Toilet paper she uses.
Yeah.
Like, by, like, measuring it beforehand.
She collects her strands of hair from the bed so she can make a
doll. It's really it's a lot.
Yeah, she's a full-blown, just, like, they try to make her, like, as creepy and fucked up as possible as you can get without actually laying a hand on the little girl. It's like anything short of actually, like, abusing this child, she will do, And, of course, it's all just played for laughs, and that's fine. It's not like I wouldn't say this show is disturbing, per se.
No, I think they focused more on, like, her touching her, or, like, they kind of had any kind of romance between the two characters, or maybe...
You don't see her, like, spying on her getting dressed or anything like that,
No. I don't know. I think some people would definitely probably just find the conceit of the show
most
really
people
disturbing.
Most people will find this show to be lolly trash.
I understand that, but I don't think as a lolly show it goes as far as other things.
No, I just it's more, it's not even so much that it's creepy and that's what's off-putting about it. It's just that it doesn't make for good storytelling. It's just like, it's so unbelievable and odd, and the characters have such, like, imbalanced motivations and stuff that it just leads to the show not being good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the maid, you cannot invest yourself in her as a character because she's beyond the impossible. Like, she's absolutely weird in every possible way. Like, all she cares about is being a maid for this little girl. She has no other ambitions, no other goals. She is set in stone in that. The things she does can be funny. One running gag is that she keeps, like, trying to dress up in, like, little girl cosplay to hang out with the girl. Like, she'll want to follow her to school or something.
Fuck. She's like one of the most buff female characters in anime.
She's definitely one of the most ripped. She's kind of like a female version of a Maid Guy, which was a big buff
And she has
Maid guy.
one eye, so she's like a little scrappy.
Yeah, she's fucking intense. And so, like, when she's wearing, literally, like, she doesn't, like, put on a school uniform. She puts on a little girl school uniform that does not fit and is, like, stretched all over her muscles grotesquely and shit. And, like, there's these rumors. Okay, so here's where I started to get into why I don't think that the show, like, I think that the internal logic is just so fucky that it's hard to care. Because, like, one of the things in the show is that, the neighbors who keep seeing this maid come to the house, like, in cosplay and stuff, and, like, do weird shit, have started, like, spreading rumors about the guy who, you know, the dad. And, like, the dad interacts with this maid regularly. You know, he's at home, he sees her all the time. And, like, aside from the fact that his daughter can't stand her, and she, you know, says weird, kind of, you know, pedophile things around him, and he actively is aware that the neighbors are, like, think he's some kind of, like, sex deviant because of the fact these people are coming over. None of this has deterred him in any way from hiring her. There was a scene in the episode we just watched, the first half of episode 8, where, like, there's a second maid who comes later, and the two of them get into a car with the little girl, and he, like, comes out, and the neighbors are talking shit about him, and he's like, oh, ever since those maids move in, everybody's giving me so much grief. And it's like, you don't have to hire them.
At this point in the story, too, she's already going to school. Like, she doesn't really even need a maid anymore.
Yeah, like, his whole thing was he just needed her to stop. I mean, I guess it helps to have a maid around, because he can't cook and clean and do all that shit. But, like, you know, it's not at the point where the little girl, I mean, he could just hire a normal maid now.
Exactly.
Like, I'm sure she would gladly welcome having someone not a monster.
There was a second character that's introduced, like the white-haired maid.
Yeah.
And basically the little girl conspires to have the old maid fired in place of the white-haired maid, but she, like, is crazy, and she also can't cook, and, like, feeds her disgusting food, and she, like, only wants the original maid back because she can cook.
Right, she only wants her around so she can cook, and she's
with
willing to replace her.
To just take care of her basic needs.
Which she wasn't at the beginning, but now we've come to this point, and it's kind of like, okay, well, the conceit of all of this is crumbling around us.
Exactly.
Just like the animation was in that episode.
Holy shit.
So, like, this show, a big part of why we were into it is that it's Doga Kobo, and it looks great. Like, first episode, tons of Sakuga, just lots of cute little, you know, Doga Kobo moments, we'll call them. Like, the characters running around, the little girl's mega cute, well-voiced, fun to watch. The comedy's pretty dumb, but it's like, when it looks nice and it's pleasant, and it's just, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, other than, you know, morally, then it's easy to watch. But as it went along, like, first, I think the biggest blow was introducing the second maid.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, I understand that at this point in the story, which is pretty early, like, this comedy gimmick...
through, they just have to keep adding characters. And, like, they start by adding classmate characters who are kind of, like, gimmicky characters.
Oh, I forgot there even were.
Yeah, there's like
another
her
little
nerdy
girl,
friend
right?
who's kind of cute. And then there's a pigtail girl who's, like, constantly jealous of her. And, like, that... It's really annoying. Remember that episode?
Isn't she, like, low-key in love with her or something? Or...
She's in love with the maid. She, like, calls the maid, like, master, and, like, because she teaches
I don't even
her
fucking remember.
There's an
this
episode
shit.
where, like, they have, like, a fashion contest for whatever reason, and the maid helps her, like, become more fashionable by pulling off her gaudy leggings, and then she's like, and then she, like, loves her, and then they also have, like, a school...
yeah!
They have, like, an episode at their school festival, and
we just watched this, like, 4 days ago, and I don't remember any of this. Like,
I mean, it's forgettable.
It's so... That's the thing about this show, is that, like, we had watched, I think, just the first episode back when it first started airing last season, and we were like, yeah, alright, but we didn't end up watching any. Maybe we watched 2 episodes, but we just like picked up where we left off watching this, and like all I could really remember was the conceit of it and having seen some nice animation. I already don't remember anything from the preceding 5 or 6 episodes. Not at all. Like, aside from specific moments in the one we just watched, I was like struggling to remember what you were talking about just now. Like, you mentioned gaudy leggings, and I was like, what the fuck? And I had to like picture them, and then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
There was another girl in the show. Like, I forgot other characters had been introduced earlier. Because, like, with these kind of comedy shows where the premise is so simplistic, where it's just, like, such a basic setup for hijinks, but then it's just like, well, there's only so much hijinks you can do within this setup. It's like, how far can we go with this? And, like, I think, Kobayashi's Dragon Maid did a much better job of, having a lot of variety, emotional moments sometimes, characters who branched off of the...
tastefully introducing new characters and giving them their own plot lines and motivations and their own sub-narratives. This show is just rapist Looney Tunes. That's what it is.
That's pretty good. I mean, Looney Tunes was already rapist Looney Tunes. Have you ever seen Pepe Le Pew? She's very Pepe Le Pew-esque.
Yeah,
that's probably a good comparison. This show is kind of like watching those segments. Yeah, the second maid that they introduce is, like, she hogs a lot of screen time, and she is bafflingly uninteresting. Like, she shows up, and she's upset. Okay, so she's another military officer who was in love with the maid that we know that we have, our maid, the main maid. I need to probably learn their fucking names. I've got Mal right in front of me. Alright, so we got Kamui, the main maid, and Ukai, the shitty one.
There's the pedo maid and the stalker maid.
Yeah, they're both stalkers. But Kamui,
It's true.
Ukai is stalking Kamui, and she, becomes a maid and styles herself in a certain way so that she can try to be more appealing to her. Like, she's
Wasn't
wearing
there
this...
one sequence where, like, the pedo maid was stalking the little girl and the other maid was stalking her?
Yeah.
Because that was
happened.
funny as fuck.
I remember that. That was funny. The show has funny moments.
Yeah.
They're just not memorable. Like, this new maid, she wears a, like, silver, I guess I would say, wig, and, like this long silver hair, because she thought it would make her more attractive to the other maid. But then the other maid is like, oh, I'm not interested in anybody above, who's had their first period. But she's still wearing the wig afterwards anyways.
Even though it looks terrible.
It looks terrible. It's just, like, part of her maid attire.
Like, yeah, it's part of her outfit, but, like...
But her personality is exactly the same as Darkness from Konosuba.
Taken up to 11. Darkness is like a 10 out of 10 on the masochism scale.
Yeah, this is 11 out of 10.
This is what happens when you go too far. And some may say Darkness is too far, but, like...
I find Darkness annoying sometimes.
I think in season 2, because they put so much focus on her character, it was a lot.
And they just never do anything else with her. Like, it's always the same joke. It's always that she's masochistic.
I mean, this show is like...
This is way worse because the joke is even less funny.
No, it's not funny
it's
at
like,
all.
When you've got the masochist character, like Darkness, like, at least you can set up funny scenarios for why she is, like we know she's baseline a masochist. That's not that funny. It's like the crazy lengths that they'll go to cause her pain, and for her to get off on it, that is funny.
She's also in situations where, like, she'll have to face that.
Like, I think my favorite is her getting dragged by, like, she was, like, tied up in a rope and being dragged behind the thing as bait. Like, that's funny. You know, regardless of the fact that she's getting off on it.
She's a soldier. She's gonna face a lot of shit like that. But, like, a maid...
That's the thing. So, Ukai, the maid...
And nobody was, like, trying to hurt her.
Right. So, in order for them to... Because, like, here's the thing. She's a super masochistic character. And, yes, she will get off on, like, other people shitting on her and stuff like that. Which, again, not funny. But, like... those characters have no reason to abuse her any further. And there's no situations she's going to find herself in. So, in order to... supercharge her masochism, they made it so she literally, physically becomes ill when she's in situations where things are, like, too good for her. So she's staying in some, like, really fancy hotel in town. And, like, but she's set up a tent in the room with a sleeping bag and everything, and has, like, turned her thermostat to make it cold to compensate for the place is too nice. And, like, the way this is presented, it's just like, what? Like, why? Why would that be the... How can that be the case? Like,
That scene
is this
legit made me
psychological?
jealous.
Is this, like, a magical thing?
She was
like,
able to turn the thermostat down to 60 degrees.
Yeah, if only. If only
We don't
we
even
could.
have heat.
We have to get it. We have the heater at 76 to keep it 60
It's
degrees.
usually
in here
like
right now.
like 5 to like 10 degrees at night in the room before we
Yeah.
put the electric heater in there.
So it was just like weird and baffling. This scene with the girl,
No.
like we're looking at it and it's like, okay, what is funny about this? Like, what is funny about this condition she has? It's just like she finds herself in a situation where she sees something, or things are too nice for her, and then she just is in pain, and it's just like that's not even funny.
No.
And
like the episode we were watching was just they were going to her hotel to like have a girls' night or some shit, and it's just like this. I could tell where this is going. They're in like a really expensive, luxurious hotel, and all of the jokes are just that.
that they're in an expensive,
too good
luxurious
for her,
hotel.
and she's gonna
yeah.
have like these weird physiological like. Her nose is gonna bleed all over the place, and it's like, well, this wasn't funny. Like,
no, and also the animation in this episode
was dog shit.
Like, it's really funny that the show consistently had pretty good moments. I don't think it was ever like ugly until episode 8, and I would describe it as the animation melted. Like, almost every shot, the characters' faces are off model for like the whole beginning of the episode. There's parts where like a character meant to be walking across screen just kind of skips from one end to the other, and it's not done in like an interesting aesthetic way where it seems like it was on purpose. It seems like it was supposed to be animated and it just didn't get that far, like there were just a lot of shots where it was like, wow, clearly this was not rechecked, or this was drawn in a hurry, or I don't know if there was an animator strike at Dokukobo or what was going on, but episode 8 was a little melty. It wasn't it didn't stay as bad as the beginning. The beginning of the episode, the first few minutes were like unbelievably bad, but after that it was like watchable. But like, yeah, I don't know. It was weird to see that happen because I don't really know of Dogakobo having this issue normally. Like, it seems like they usually have pretty tightly run productions going by how they look. But yeah, it fell apart and we lost interest. Just like we've lost interest in talking about this anymore, I think.
Yeah.
So, there you go. That's UzaMaid, and probably the end of this episode of Finish or Fail. I mean, it will be, but I think we've got over 30 minutes.
Yeah.